This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the Falling in Reverse album from 2013, Fashionably Late. Now, this came after their 2011 debut, The Drug in Me Is You, and Ronnie Radke had been touting this project throughout 2012, and it eventually surfaced in the summer of 2013. Now, the thing about this project is it's pretty multifaceted. It's kind of a chameleon of a project, and it's interesting just because it tries some styles and there's a bunch of stuff that kind of goes along with it. But I looked up some critic reviews of this, and it seemed like the critics were not really as fond of this project as like the fans were. Like, this is pretty popular on Spotify and stuff, but I noticed like on Sputnik Music, for example, this album only got like a 1.5 out of 5 stars, and it just seemed like some other critics kind of gave it like a 2 out of 5 and that type of stuff. So it just seems, I don't know if that's typical of like Falling in Reverse, that the fans tend to like it more than the critics do. But like some of the stuff like The Millionaires, critics hated them, and Broken Side and Blood on the Dance Floor and some of them. So this might be just around that similar base kind of angle. But this is really the first Falling in Reverse project I've reviewed. I did review Ronnie Radke's rap mixtape back in the summer. But then I also, like, originally I was going to review this project, like, back in the summer of 2019, but because I couldn't find more songs, like, Alone, I kind of waited to review it. Like, I really appreciate, like, the rapcore kind of feel of Alone. That's really, like, an interesting kind of tinge. I thought he was going to do that way more, because it had said that this had some rapcore, but really the only song that really does the rap type vibe is just Alone, and maybe there's, like, one other song that does it, but there was just some stuff on here. Like, I was going to review it 3.5 years ago, but I didn't. I think I might have tried reviewing it again in 2020, but it's just been an album that's been on the back burner for like the past 3 years of my life. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to review this, get it up like it should have been back then. This is an interesting one. There's a lot of stuff on here. There's a lot of multifaceted styles. Like, there's a lot going on. There's crunkcore, pop punk, electronica, metalcore, hardcore, some of that type of stuff. So there's just a lot. Ronnie Radke really had his hands full as far as this project really being a chameleon. There's just plenty of stuff. Like I said, I don't know an overabundance about Falling in Reverse. I haven't reviewed a lot. This is pretty much the first one I reviewed of them, but I kind of feel like, based upon what I've seen, this is a pretty sarcastic album. Like, if you know that typical like kind of like overcast kind of way that like pop punk bands like Blink 182 and Good Charlotte and MGK in some cases, just if you can think of some of the typical pop punk bands that kind of have that chorus style that they do, there's probably a few other ones like I'm thinking like Fountains of Wayne and some of them, but Ronnie Radke has that type style in his choruses, and he does them often in those type of, I mean, most of the choruses on here are kind of pop punk, but they are pretty sarcastic. I mean, they're just exaggerated. I don't want to say like they just have more, like, it almost feels like smitish. I don't want to say it's like being spiteful, but this kind of smitish kind of connotation towards it, or it just feels more exact. I don't know if it's, I don't want to look at it in the negative light, but it just feels more kind of sarcastic, and it just feels more exaggerated than most pop punk bands really kind of get. And I think maybe Ronnie Radke did that on purpose, but the exaggerated kind of connotation to how some of these choruses kind of go with like Fashionably Late, Bad Girls Club, Born to Lead, and like a couple other ones, like even Keep Holding On. All of the singles, pretty much besides Alone, kind of have that. They just feel a lot more exaggerated and a lot more kind of like satire or fabrication of like what normal pop punk kind of is. And I don't know if like Ronnie Radke is always like this, or if he was just kind of in a rotten mood, or just kind of felt like being an ass on this particular project. But it is kind of funny. You look after it, is like, I don't, it just feels like he just is like extra kind of like pissed, or just annoyed on this project for some reason. I just kind of caught that kind of vibe. But we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. So there were 5 of them. I mean, it said, like, Wikipedia says in like the articles about it that there's only 3 singles, but then in the tab it says that there's 5. So let's go ahead and talk about the 5 singles. So the first one is the rapcore kind of electronic one called Alone. Yeah, like Alone has like a very much rap kind of oriented, like it almost feels like a mixtape kind of song type stuff. I feel like this probably could have been on Ronnie Radke's Watch Me mixtape. Very eloquent and just easily kind of go in for that sort of stuff. I mean, there just were not a lot of pop punk bands that kind of would have like a kind of more like club sounding type rock record on here and kind of pull that off. So it's pretty good to have gotten that and kind of seen how well that worked. Probably one of the best songs on this album. I definitely feel like this is just the easy going. Like the lead single just completely knocked that one out of the park and nailed it pretty well. I just would have to say that's an easy going one. Club song, electronic song, just nice effects and easy kind of chorus to help benefit that even further. The second single was Fashionably Late, and this one's kind of more pop punk. This is kind of what I was saying, kind of like the Blink 182 type stuff. But yeah, this Fashionably Late was an interchangeable kind of pop punk song. I do feel like it worked. It kind of reminded me of something MGK would do or something from Blink 182. It just worked pretty much immediately with that. Same kind of chorus, just kind of an exaggerated chorus, but it works pretty well. Just easily something that could be played on like the punk charts and that type stuff. I would have to say simple enough song to kind of work with and kicked a lot of ass and that type stuff. I do feel like I I need to pay more attention to like what 2010s kind of punk was like because I have reviewed a lot of the 2000s bit of it, but in terms of like where it was at in like 2012, 2014, that type stuff, I want to see some more of that just to wonder how, I mean, because this song did get some airplay, but I don't know as to the degree of how much it did. But it is a pretty serviceable pop punk song, so it's good. But there's just not much like it, and that's kind of the thing. I would have liked another song like Fashionably Late. The third song was Born to Lead, and this is another one that tries something different. So that's three different singles. Alone was the rap one, Fashionably Late was the pop punk, and this one is kind of like Slipknot sounding, where if you take like a Good Charlotte Blink 182 kind of chorus, pop punk type chorus, and then you mix it with like very similar screamo vocals to Corey Taylor from Slipknot. That's kind of what you get in Born to Lead. Now, the thing I noticed about this album, another thing I noticed about it is it kind of has like some positive undertones where it kind of is like more kind of uplifting and encouraging more so than kind of more like destructive like Korn or some of those folks, or at least back older Korn kind of used to be. It's a lot more kind of constructive and that type stuff. So it kind of like I was noticing that in the screamo vocals, he actually wasn't trying to break things, but he was trying to like repair things and that type stuff. So it's interesting to kind of get that. I don't know how I feel about like screamo vocals being kind of uplifting, but I did like the screamo vocals and the production on the song. So I think it's kind of odd to kind of mosh pit to something that's telling you to be a, build and that type stuff, but that's something to kind of notice. I did like the song. The fourth single is Bad Girls Club, and this one is kind of like an electronic pop punk song. Like Bad Girls Club just has like electronic right through the verses and stuff. I mean, this is kind of similar to Alone. This is another one in that kind of vibe, but just with like a more Blink 182 type feel towards it. And I kind of feel like I did like it, but the chorus was pretty like exaggerated. I mean, this is another exaggerated chorus on here. Like I felt like Fashionably Late was, and this is another one. And just some of these kind of feel have more pitch towards them is just kind of drawn out more so than I expected them to. I really, yeah, like Born to Lead, Fashionably Late, and Bad Girls Club all had like exaggerated choruses, but it's just kind of interesting to have kind of gotten that. But this is a nice song. I do appreciate it, despite kind of like it did feel like kind of like a hodgepodge sarcastic kind of one. I don't know. It's odd to kind of see this just because it feels kind of satirical. I mean, this album just kind of feels like somewhat satirical in a sense, but uh like yeah, so song number 5 is Keep Holding On, and this is similar to the Hold On song that Good Charlotte did back on their uh, Young and Restless album from 2002. And I didn't really appreciate this one because I didn't really like the production on there, and it kind of, I mean, this one was somewhat exaggerated, but it kind of was trying to tell you to keep up the fight and keep going with it and beat the odds, that type stuff. But I really didn't like the kind of like mellow kind of uplifting kind of production on there, but then the message was kind of not. I mean, Ronnie Radke was not being like a scrub on the song and just kind of being like super soft on the song. He did it in like a somewhat edgy way, but it's still, the production was just what held this song back. Maybe if he had had the his edge to the song, but it had been a more interesting production, I probably would have liked that one. But yeah, so I wound up liking 4 out of 5 singles, and then I'll go ahead and talk about the album here. So there's not much to the deluxe edition. I felt like these just did not have like some of the like the Where Have You Been kind of had like a more metalcore sound that I wasn't looking for. I mean, there's just too many different concepts of this project that kind of went about that I wonder like what was kind of going on with it. And yeah, so like Where Have You Been, I didn't appreciate as much like I didn't appreciate the production as much on Where Have You Been and Goddamn. Like Goddamn felt like Drifter and Keep Holding On, which was just kind of more of like a breezy, but just kind of lot more kind of mellow kind of sounding song that just did not quite sound as interesting. And Where Have You Been was kind of like Champion, where it just had like, I mean, Champion, Self Destruct, Personality. Some of those kind of had like some awkward kind of sounding productions almost that like I feel like this concept of being like pop punk, but then with like a Slipknot kind of tinge to it works in like a certain aspect. But then I look at it at the same time, then it kind of, I mean, even Slipknot did not kind of have like the hair metal and kind of more metalcore kind of sounding sound that some of these songs kind of have. They just were trying a lot of styles on here, so they're they're meshing like electronic, metalcore, um, like groove metal. It felt like Slipknot type sound, uh, pop punk. I mean, there's just a lot of amalgamations, and it's kind of difficult because they only stick with like one type sound like once or twice out of these 14 songs. So really, like I felt like some of the ones that they should have stuck with more probably would have led to better results. Like Alone, I felt like they need another song like that, and I felt like they need another song like Fashionably Late, similar to that one. I feel like they could have used another song like Bad Girls Club too. I mean, that was kind of electronica, but just a lot of these, they just did a one and done, and then that really took over it. So that's kind of the concept. Or most of the song, like it just feels like almost every song is different. In a lot of ways, when you like a certain sound and you rock with it, but then they don't have anything else like it, I feel like some of these probably could have been carved out more and refined. So it's just kind of, it's a very spotty and kind of spastic kind of project. That just relatively happens to be a thing. I mean, they nailed it with Alone, Fashionably Late, Bad Girls Club, and kind of Born to Lead if you can tolerate the overtly kind of hammy upliftingness towards it. But there's just a lot of stuff on here that has either exaggerated sarcasm or kind of more pep in your step, get up and go kind of like motivational type push that just doesn't really, is not as attractive. It just feels like a rock version of a hustle guy. If you've seen like some rap folks that kind of turn out to be hustle guys, they're trying to get you on your feet and get you out the door and that type stuff. I mean, there's a lot of that on here. There's like Game Over kind of does that. Keep Holding On kind of does that. Uh, Born to Lead kind of does that. I mean, there's just some moments on here that kind of come off as like some, just a lot more. I don't like, I do like a hustle type mentality, but I feel like the concept behind it is it just kind of feels like one of those like, kind of churchy type fellows that this is trying to get you to kind of join their retinue and that type stuff. It just kind of, I don't know. It's odd seeing rock musicians try to pull off that hustle type vibe, because the difference between telling you to get up and get it and kind of doing it in an uplifting way, it's just kind of more one or two lines in the song more so than the whole song just being encouraging to step out and save the world and that type stuff. And this is kind of, I kind of was hoping for something more like, not quite, more, maybe more kind of flossing, like if it's going to be like rap oriented, but just kind of with the connotations of a more kind of serviceable braggadocious type stuff. Maybe, I mean, Ronnie Radke struck me as more of like kind of arrogant almost, and it's not like I think that he is, but this is the concept. Maybe that type personality would have suited him better. It's just kind of underneath that context, but he kind of goes with the more exaggerated sarcasm that kind of seems like he's satiring his own genre of music that he's in, which is kind of odd. This is kind of the thing. So I'll talk about some of the songs I recommend. So there were 7 out of 12 on the standard edition, and that's pretty much 7 out of 15 on both editions. So just to kind of list these, I'll go ahead and say songs I recommend are Bad Girls Club, Rolling Stone, Fashionably Late, Alone, Born to Lead, It's Over When It's Over, and Game Over. So talk about some of these besides the singles, like Rolling Stone was so yeah, like Rolling Stone was kind of similar to Fashionably Late. I guess there were a couple that kind of had like some similarities, but Rolling Stone is just a little bit crazier than Fashionably Late. It's a little bit more carnivorous and mosh pit style. Game Over is kind of like one of these kind of push yourself kind of songs that kind of has it in like a video game connotation, has like the Nintendo sound effects and that type stuff. Pretty good song. I think it can be seen as like a satire in some senses of like, I mean, I like it because it's kind of halfway serious about telling you to quit playing games and get out and get something, but at the same time it's kind of a parody of that just because it's like it's not like it's that much of a big deal, but it's just kind of it's half and half. It just depends upon the angle of how you look after it, whether or not how serious Ronnie Radke is. And then It's Over When It's Over had a real that this probably had the second best or the best beat on here. It's very similar to Alone. Kind of like had a real It's Over When It's Over had a club sounding kind of beep, kind of chirpish kind of beat on there, and I feel like it worked as like a nice nightlife kind of song. Really, this album kind of steps out in different ways. I mean, this is kind of a stepping out album, but it kind of has like some slashes of that just kind of mixed in where it's kind of pop punk, but there's just so many different varieties. You can't really get a distinct style where I feel like Alone and It's Over Where It's Over kind of have like a more stepping out kind of setting, but then Fashionably Late and Rolling Stone are kind of more at the house, kind of more get together type house party type shindig. Bad Girls Club is kind of a romantic song. Born to Lead is kind of like a car song, cruising and taking the charge. And like Game Over is kind of like a this kind of lackadaisical, kind of mellow, kind of summer song that just kind of has like some sarcastic undertone. That's just kind of the thing about it. So there's just stuff about it. It's kind of a mismatch hodgepodge of release, but it's just there's so much shit going on that it just is kind of that's what you really have to pay attention to. Is it's just all over the place. That's really the thing about it. But I'm gonna give this album me liking 7 out of 12. I'll go ahead and give this album a 6.5 out of 10. But if I grade the deluxe edition, I'd probably have to change it to like a 5.5 because me liking 7 out of 15 is a little bit more than half. So if you want to count the deluxe edition, which the Rolling Stone remix was another one that kind of did what Linkin Park was doing with like Recharged, but couldn't quite get into it. Just had a lot going on. I mean, a lot of these were just messy. They should have put a single on there if they were going to do it, but none of them really had the bite of like Alone or It's Over When It's Over, or Bad Girls Club, or Fashionably Late. So the biggest thing about this project is just it's a mess. It's a complete mess, but it's not a crappy mess. That's what you have to understand. It's a mess. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moments that are kind of going to make you scratch your head, but you just have to look after it. If you can sift through it, this is kind of why I didn't review this 3 years ago, because this was like a real chore in certain ways to listen to just to figure it out. And there's just a lot of shit that kind of went along with it that just made it more difficult than it probably needed to be. I don't know why it was. I don't understand. Like I just felt like Ronnie Radke was just being very spastic on this project. But I give it a 6. I don't remember if I said I give it a 6.5 out of 10, but I'm gonna like 7 out of 12. Yeah, I think I said a 6.5. If I didn't, I think that's what it should be, is a 6.5 out of 10, because I feel like 7 out of 12 is a little bit better. So 6.5 out of 10. The social score, I will give like about a 6.5 out of 10 also, just because it did have 5 singles, but not many of them were really kind of outgoing in that sort of context. I just kind of feel like Alone was a good one, Fashionably Late kind of was, Born to Lead somewhat was, depending upon the tone of it, and Bad Girls Club is more kind of just more romantic one. And Keep Holding On was not that social. So it's just kind of, I mean, this album is just so spotty. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, he really just kind of chose different ones and it didn't really have like a club sense or a social sense or a weekend kind of sense about it. But some of these are more popular than others. You just have to dissect the ones. I mean, it does kind of have that Hot Topic kind of emo flair to it also, but it's just not as heavily promoted as maybe his previous album was, or that type of stuff. So that's kind of the concept. So yeah, that's kind of the thing about it. 6.5. I just feel like it's kind of spotty. I mean, there are some moments. If I had to pick like some hot topic moments, I would say like Fashionably Late, Alone, Bad Girls Club, Game Over, Born to Lead. I mean, some of those really feel like that sort of context, but it's just so much of Rolling Stone probably is another one. But yeah, just some of this is just it's very spotty. I really feel like it's just an explosion of like just multitudes. I think it's just completely spur of the moment, just complete like ADD kind of mentality almost. This is kind of the concept behind it. This is odd. So that's just kind of the situation. But in terms of the future, like it's been a while for Falling in Reverse. I think that's kind of the concept about it. It's been a while for them. I'm just kind of underneath the impression of what they're going to do and when they're going to come back. They thought about putting out an EP this year, but it didn't happen or it hasn't happened yet. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this kind of the thing.